Hello everybody, my name is Controller, and I'm going to go over some basics of tanks today. So to start with, we're going to go over some uses of the tank class. Obviously in PvE and in PvP, they're taking damage. That's the whole point of the tank. They're to soak up a bunch of damage from your enemies before they hit your attackers, debuffers, supporters, etc. In PvE, especially, the importance of tanks is in positioning. They have positioning, they have taunt in some cases, healing and sustain. The big point of tanks in PvE is to use your positioning to your advantage and make sure that the enemy attackers are hitting only your tanks as best as possible. Most encounters will allow you to do that just via positioning. However, the taunt and provoke abilities are both different respective ways that you can force enemy attackers to hit your tanks. So using those three abilities, well, using positioning and those two abilities are going to be the best way to prevent your attackers from getting sniped. You also want to make sure that your tanks have healing or some kind of sustain, whether that be from a supporter that's healing them, or their own sustain with a ship like Isha. You want them to be able to survive a long time and not just survive burst damage. On the flip side of that, tanks in PvP are mostly there to be resisting burst damage. Most of the damage in PvP is done in the first 1 to 2 rounds. So you're essentially trying to make sure that your stealth chips stay stealthed for that amount of time. The positioning tends to matter less in Arena, just because of the prevalence of stealth right now, which means you're looking more to have tanks that are taunting and tanks that can survive than tanks that are positioned well. Now, moving on to some of their stat importance, there are some stats to look out for. I have a list pulled up here. In red are the most important. You need high HP and high defense on your tanks. Generally speaking, 6 to 10 times your defense is what your HP should be. So in this case, you can see that my HP is a little under 10 times my defense. You can also look at if you had, say, 60,000 HP, then you would probably want over 6,000 defense. But generally, you're looking for that type of ratio where you have lots of HP, but also enough defense to be knocking away at your opponent's damage. Also, keep in mind that defense does have diminishing returns. The more defense you get, the less defense actually matters. So don't try and go all in on defense. Once you start getting to 15, 16,000 defense, it's not doing a whole lot to actually get more of it. So you want to be focusing on HP once you start getting to 10, 12, 13k defense generally. Next most important is security on tanks. Security is to resist debuff application on your tanks. And of course, the obvious of not wanting your opponent to be applying something like defense down applies here. You wouldn't want something like that being applied. It's just making your tank worse overall. But also stuff like dot damage, bombs, inferno, corrosion. The less of that that sticks to your tank, the better. And a high security typically is going to beat high hacking, just because you need 100 more hacking than your opponent's security to beat them. So security, like I'm showing here, that's on my Vindicator, is generally speaking kind of overkill. If you want to be resisting debuffs, most of the time you can achieve that with between 200 and 250 security. And then down here is speed. Speed may or may not matter on tanks. It depends on the tank and what you're doing with it. If you're using a taunting tank, you definitely want to have speed because you want that taunt to be applied. And if you're using this tank for something like the Vault, you need to make sure that your speed is in line with whatever vault tier you're going at. In addition to that, not marked on this chart, crit rate, crit power, hacking all could be important for tanks, but generally speaking, you're not caring too much about them. A lot of tanks will have abilities that apply some kind of debuff, which might make you think that you want hacking. Really, the only tank that you want hacking on at the moment is an enemy, and she only really sees use in the vault in some corrosion builds, so I wouldn't worry too much about hacking outside of her and outside of sometimes vault and sometimes in conjunction with other units. Moving on from that, we have some sets that you need to watch out for tanks. You'll see here I have those highlighted as well. And you'll see the Fortitude or HP set. You'll see the Defense set. You'll see the Protection set, which gives defense and security. You'll also see the Shield set, which grants your ship 4% of its HP as a shield every turn per set bonus. And then also the Abyssal HP and Abyssal Fortitude, which give HP and security and defense and HP respectively. Using those sets are going to be the best on your tanks. And then you're looking out for bottom row stats. You want to be looking out for HP percent, defense percent, and on occasion, flat security. Past that, just ensure that your tanks are actually blocking the damage. If they aren't getting hit, they aren't doing anything. So obviously that's something that you want to be avoiding. You want them to get hit. Put them in harm's way. That's their job. In Arena, try your best to spread them out from your attackers. The splash damage on a lot of ships in Arena is more than enough to kill your attackers. So you want to make sure that your tanks are at least a space away from anything that you want to survive. You also want to look out for any abilities that will allow you to cleanse, which will be very helpful since your tanks are soaking up so much damage and taking all of the hits. You want to be able to cleanse if there is any defense down or incoming damage up or whatever other debuff may be on the unit. You want to be able to cleanse that if you have to. In addition to that, also be looking out for buffs that do the opposite. So defense up, incoming damage down, security, anything that will get you more of those main stats is something that's going to help on the tank. And it's why in PvE, it's very common to see one tank and one semi-tanky supporter working in conjunction to basically tank for an entire rest of the team. And that's all I have for tanks. Thank you everyone for listening, and good luck on the Frontier, Commander.